New
Hello, everybody! If it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer, and that means it's time for another episode of Warhammer Weekly. Joining me, as always, is my co-host who doesn't pay attention to when I'm saying I'm hitting start. It's Tom. What's up, buddy? How you
It's
doing?
fine. It's
It's
fine.
fine.
Hello, friends. How are you? I'm having a wonderful evening. I hope your evening is going well as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry we're late, everybody. It's Tom's fault. I mean, he's
It
going to
is.
tell you it
It
was a
is.
computer problem, but, come on.
It was my fault for the first 4 minutes, and then the next 4 minutes was Vince talking about magic, and I'm not lying. That
It
happened.
wasn't 4 minutes, and I was letting you get ready. It's fine. You were still going on about other things. Anyways, let's get into it. We'll get straight into the
Indeed.
show. Not a lot of news tonight.
No,
So
we have
that'll
a
be
rumor
quick.
engine.
Yeah, we do.
So,
It's a
so
40K
how about
thing.
that? How about that rumor engine?
Mm-hmm. Yet again, it's a
Yep.
40K thing. Actually, what I want to talk about with the rumor engine, Tom, is not
Yep.
anything to do with this rumor engine, okay?
Yep.
Like, whatever, it's a stupid 40K thing for next year's 10th edition release or whatever. That's what
Yep.
they're all going to be. For like 3 out of 4 of them are going to be that going forward, right? Um so the here's my question, okay? What happened to the advent calendar this year?
What advent calendar?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think you're the only person that was thinking about that.
Well, it's been a thing the past couple years. The
Yeah.
past many years.
Yeah.
They do this like 24 days of rumors. Yeah?
Yep.
And yet here we
Yep.
are. It's obviously December 7th. We're well into theoretical advent calendar time. And nothing. Nothing. So, no, it is not, Martin. So the I'm just kind of surprised. That's my honest answer. Also, even in black and white, you can tell that outer ring is metallic because you can like see the giant, fat, awful edge highlights that someone was forced to paint with that awful metallic paint. So there you go. But there's a one small other news item.
Hmm. There's actually more than that, but it's fine. We'll cover those. The other
Yeah.
small news item that Vince is referencing is the model of the year, of which the Demon Prince is going to win.
Which, you really think so?
I do, and here's the reason why.
I'm
It's the
excited.
only AOS model that AOS folks will vote for, and between that and the fact it actually has broad appeal in Chaos, in 40K, I think that and anybody that's coming in from Total War, because the modifiable Demon Prince is the big thing for Total War 3. I don't know how it doesn't pull all of those votes.
Yeah,
That skew all of it. When you look at the
because he's
distribution,
ugly.
I mean, I don't know,
That's
maybe.
it, man. I don't know what else to tell you. He's an ugly model. Like, that is to say, his face is goofball in the image. Now, there are good faces in the box,
Sure,
okay?
sure. Yeah, yep,
But, homie, this ain't it. These are that base face is bad. It's bad
yeah,
face.
yeah. No, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, I don't know. Maybe the Avatar of Kane. It feels like everything is so niche otherwise. There's no other reliable AOS models here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um and so not that AOS has ever really determined who the winner is here anyways. But that's why I'm saying that it would have to be something that I think that would cross genres, which would be the Demon Prince.
Sure.
So that's my suspicion. We'll see.
Uh, it's that Hecaton Land Fortress, homie, because
I don't even know what
uh,
that is.
that would be the thing in September. The Hecaton Land Fortress is the large vehicle of the Leagues of Votan, Spaced
It
Work.
just looks like a green round thing.
It looks like the TMNT van, is what it
I
looks
mean,
like.
maybe.
And that is awesome. So there you go.
You're out of your mind. That's fine. The new BCP launched. The new edition of that launched, I think, this week. That's the
Yep.
thing that just happened. Um, the event wise, Brewhammer signups went live Saturday, and neither of us got in. So that
Yeah,
was
correct.
exciting.
I was like, I set my alarm. I had reminders, but I was like, I woke up a little late, and I was like, I'll get myself ready. I'll still be able to do it by like 10:30.
Nope.
Nope.
So
Oops.
maybe we're not doing Brewhammer.
I guess that's a shame. It's a shame to miss a tournament right here in town. But hey, here we are. It's like I'm glad. I'm super glad they sold out.
I'm on the wait list. I don't know if you are, but I definitely am.
Yeah, I need to email him. So
yeah, do that. Yeah. What else? I think that's it, probably. Yeah, that's probably
the only thing. The only other thing worth maybe mentioning is that today we got 2 new AOS War Scrolls for 2 new like Underworlds warbands, namely the Velmorn, the skeletons, angry pointy skeleton man.
Yep.
King Morlack Velmorn, and we also got it for Sarakar Blackwing, which is the Chaos dudes, right?
Nice.
The Undivided Dark Oath Chaos dudes. Basically the Gnarl Spirit box. And I'll start out with the I don't have these scrolls downloaded, so I'm sorry everybody. The King Morlack Velmorn, most awesome model. He could be a contender, by the way. That guy is incredible. Just saying. That whole set is incredible. Yeah, they're not good, so it's fine. They're 220 points. They're overpriced for 5 dudes.
Checks out.
They're Soulblight Gravelords, which is cool, and they're Graveguard guys, so.
I mean, I'm excited about that, so.
Sure, but I mean, they're just, they're fine. It's not worth taking for 220 points. There are so many better things you would take in the Soulblight Gravelords army than these 5 guys. Because he's basically a White King on foot.
You mean rather than the 6 guys for 280 points that are 5 zombies and a wizard?
I mean, he's not a wizard. King Morlack is. I mean, he's just a White King. He's a foot White King. He has a decent enough profile. It's okay. He has a standard Stormcast profile. 5 attacks, 3 threes, -1/2 damage on a 3-up save. And then his guys are just 4 idiots with white blades of various kinds.
Yeah.
Now, Sarakar Blackwing, okay, is a wizard, and with him you obviously.
Which warband is this for?
This is the other part of the Gnarl Spirit box. So this is the Chaos Shaman dude along with the 3 Chaos Dark Oathy looking people. They're all Undivided Dark Oath. Okay, so notably he does not have Eye of the Gods. Not that I care that much, but it's a shame.
Sure.
So both of these guys have the Dark Oath thing, where both of these units, where if they complete their oath, they get a 5-up ward for the rest of the game, which is cool. Yeah, that's fine. But I mean, they're just guys on a 5-up save normally, so it's not like they're that hard to kill. We're not talking about a tremendous amount of wounds here. It's 11 wounds total for the unit. The interesting thing about him is that he can go into reserve. Okay.
That's helpful.
Yes, and interestingly, he can come into the battlefield within 7 inches if he's coming in near a wounded unit. At the 7-inch line instead of the 9-inch line.
I like that. That's not terrible.
No, I mean, he's just a spellcaster, right? But his boys go with him, so it's the 4 of them can set up at the 7-inch line. They both have the same ambush rule.
Right. And if people aren't sitting in the dead center of an objective, you could snake it from them.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Or you can even charge in for that matter.
Yeah, I mean on the 7-inch line, they're okay-ish in combat. The group of dudes, they're okay-ish. If you could catch out a hero or something, that's fine. He has a perfectly fine okay spell, so
sure
it does some mortal wounds. But what was interesting to me about the Chaos guys was the 7-inch setup. That's an unusual thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. It's a design decision that's not normally employed.
Yeah. So that's kind of cool.
Yep.
So I see Manny Pinheiro in the chat as a big fan of the Velmorn guys. I don't see it, man. But hey, I believe you. If you like them, that's cool. I'm not against it. I just don't think it's I'm already sus on Graveguard as it is. So a unit that's like
Well,
a
I
lot
mean,
of points for a white
10
team who's
gray,
generally
10,
bad and that.
10 Graveguard can do work. Like, that's just true.
Sure, sure. If they can get there and not die, yes.
Indeed, indeed.
We've got hopefully less than a month before they're maybe playable. Yes.
We'll see.
Right, sure.
Um,
In the current world, they are very rough. Not because they're not great. They're like offensive powerhouses. They're fantastic. I absolutely agree they can do work. They're great. It's just they're another one of those units that has been like tragically shattered by the current season. It's no fault of the Graveguard. They're perfectly fine design. It's the fault of like bounty hunters in the current season. So, but, yep. Anyway, cool. I think that's all our news. Hey, there you go. There was more than we thought. How about that, huh? All right, so let's do some pick of the week. Tom, what would you like to share with everybody?
So I have a pretty big hobby project I'm working on right now.
Yeah, you do.
And it led me to friend of the channel, Ninjons.
Oh yes. I'm glad you're using that video. It's good, right?
120. I mean, so Ninjon does 120 zombies in 24 hours.
Yep.
And it's fine. It uses a lot of techniques. Like I'm not going to use oil paints. Like I appreciate what you had to say, Ninjon. It's great. I'm not going to use oil paints. That's fine. Which is like one of his big secrets to doing a lot of work quick. Yeah.
I'm saying he's already beat you as far as speed, so he must be on.
No, I'm still approaching the 24-hour mark. I'm really close, and I'm almost done.
Okay.
And which leads me to my video I'm actually going to spruik. It's not the zombie video from a year ago.
Okay.
But a couple months ago, Ninjon did a video on Slapchop 2.0. And so he took Rob's challenge of Slapchop, added a couple more steps, and called it 2.0. It's great. Worth watching. And the reality is I'm using a modified form of that. And it's great.
Sure.
And it's also very, very fast. And it gets a lot of work done and puts a lot of color on the models, and it's super interesting. And so for our community, I thought I would recommend it. That said, man, like I just left it running. The reason why I discovered that video, by the way, was I put on the zombie video and then I just kind of left it running, and it just started like running through his playlist.
Sure.
And like I've watched some of Ninja's videos before, but Jesus Christ, is he funny?
He really is. I'm telling you, this
John, man.
Yep.
Like I could literally just watch you all day, and in fact, I did, as I did 20 plus hours of zombie painting.
Yeah, or when you were down here and hanging out with us last time, they all came over and you painted like a million Night Haunt. Yes, that too.
Indeed, that time too. And so, like, if you guys aren't familiar with Ninjon's channel, like I've recommended the Slapshot 2.0. Like, check it out. It's amazing. It's funny. He just did a review of Duncan's paints, which are basically the good GW paints with better metals and old washes. Just go through his channel, check out some videos, because there's just a bunch of really good videos on there.
Absolutely. So. Yeah. John's great. He'll be here tomorrow, so it'll be a good time. Getting ready for VinnyCon 3. Final Blood. So my pick of the week is going to be for Cult of Paint. Cult of Paint did a really nice video on some of the new Chaos guys, and I love this. He actually did like 2 videos on this, and it's kind of about like not being happy and then finding a color scheme. So I'm gonna link the second one, but it's really good. I just really like the way that they talked about the challenges often that we have. It's something I talked about recently on the channel in a video, was picking a color scheme. And, this is exploring a lot of the same area and talking about challenges and failures and stuff like that. And I really dug it. And obviously, Henry and Andy are both awesome people. So, yeah, I'll link that video down below. So check that out. All right. Very good. Let's talk about some hobby time. Tom, you already kind of mentioned it, but what have you been working on?
I have 105 zombies on my table.
Just shy of 120.
Yeah, I don't need 120. I just need 105. 100 plus that dumb warband, the zombie warband, because that's what we're going for here.
Sure.
And I'm getting close. And I close on my new house on Friday. So I really need to get this done before that happens because I have more painting to do.
Tick tock.
I have more painting of a much larger scale that needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll be hobbying and airbrushing this weekend likely as well. Yeah, it's gonna be terrible. It's gonna be fun, but terrible. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, congratulations. I hope you're gonna have a horrible time, but it'll be good in about 2 months.
Exactly, and that's exactly where we're at.
All right. For myself, guess what, folks? He's back again. Everybody's little friend. Here he is. But he's almost done. This is taking a lot of work because this is now I have to do the whole unit like this. There's more of these dudes because this is for Golden Demon, and this is the most love and care and attention I have ever put into a single model, where I am just like unbelievably finicky and just trying to paint everything completely perfectly. And I double check all my work. Like I get out the sexy gogs and get out like to double check all my work and every detail and everything like that. And I have decided I do not enjoy painting like this. It's horrible.
Wow. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, this is the challenge. Golden Demon is a challenge of
replication.
Of execution, of technical execution. Like there's lots of different styles you can employ. It's not like you just have to paint an heavy metal style or something. That's not true. But you do, and they do favor, and they do value a high level of technical execution. Everything being extremely clean and perfect down to like the smallest details, right? In other words, every millimeter of the model is intentional.
Yep.
And I'll finish this unit. Like, I'm happy with how these guys are coming out. Like, I can replicate the scheme, obviously. Like, I started with just this one guy. Anytime I'm doing a unit for Golden Demon, I paint one model at a time. I never do the whole unit. But it's exhausting and not very fun is the problem it comes down to. Like, I'd rather be more creative and sort of free-flowing with it and refine and have certain small technical mistakes. It's just the nature of my style. Like, I don't have the interest to be that perfect with my execution. I don't find it compelling, I guess is the short answer. Like, I can do it. I did it here. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's just it's just kind of boring is really what it comes down to. I find it much harder to like be in the zone because I don't feel like it's not only a mix of like progress, but I don't feel like I'm pushing myself in the same way I normally would. But anyway, I think it'll be a cool unit, so I'm excited about that. And these guys are awesome models.
Do you feel like it's because it's less about exploration and more about perfection?
Probably to some degree. And I have an extreme bias for the new and the novel, right?
Right.
So yeah, probably. I think that's probably some of it, yeah. But I mean, Richard, it's always possible. Hit me up with the information. But it's been fun and I guess overall, like it has been an interesting challenge, is what I'll say. So, not that I haven't painted plenty of times for Golden Demon before. I've just never like invested, even before when I invested tons of time into models. I never went at it like this with my current like eyes and how I currently look at things.
Yeah.
So, anyways, yeah, there'll be a video coming out about a part of this at some point in the future. And it's funny, like how much I can film to put in a video in a week is like nothing. It's nothing because this guy's taken just, I don't even know how many hours I'm into this like one dude, but it's a lot. It's so many at this point. Like this will end up being a 400, 500 hour unit, something like that.
You're going to get through like 1.5 guys and be like, nah, it wasn't worth it.
No, I mean, even if I like, well, if I had one dude and he was just really good, it's like, hey, welcome to the table, single figure entry. What's up, buddy? But like, once I get to 2 done, you get to 3. That's just it. Like, then you're just, you don't round third and be like, nah. When you can see the finish line, the adrenaline takes over, okay? And, you know, you get there. So, and really this is like, this and one other thing are the last 2 things I'm working on for Golden Demon, and I've got like 4 months, so it's fine. All right, cool. So that's my hobby time. Hopefully I'll have something like actually interesting to show soon. I mean, I'm going to work on something else this weekend, so. It is yes, I am painting a unit of these guys, the Ogroid Therodons.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Bloop, bloop, bloop. There he is. So, with a little bit of Slanesh coloration, of course. You're not far off, Noops. You're not far off. Okay, cool. Well, that was fast and easy. So, with that, let's talk about tonight's topic. Tonight's topic, Tom. Ba-boom. As soon as it wants to actually render the PowerPoint. There we go. What is your favorite color? Also, what makes a good Battletome? What makes a good Battletome turn bad? So, I've wanted to talk about this for a while. And this is going to be like, as far as slides go, this is pretty simple. Because really what I want to do here is have a discussion about this. And I'm interested to see what the audience thinks as well. Because when you use an amorphous normative term like good, you are also, like I, Tom, a student of language and argumentation. And you know how challenging it is to use a word like good precisely. Right?
Sure.
Because such words have an unbelievable amount of like nuance to them, right? And they can be defined different ways for different people, blah 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 blah. However, what interests me about it is that not only is it something that could have many and a myriad definitions, but it's something we all say, right? That's the difference between sort of philosophical speech or argumentation or academic understanding of things and like the way we all just walk around talking and existing every day, right? Yeah. This is why academia, which you've chosen to pursue, is ultimately a flawed path because it doesn't actually adhere to reality. So the challenge here is we all walk around saying this is a good tome, that's a bad tome. Like we all say that, or some variation of that. This is a good model, that's a bad model. This is a good rule, that's a bad rule. This is a good war scroll, that's a bad war scroll. We use these terms. We think like we're saying something, right? So what the heck are we saying, right? And so I want to understand that. What are we saying when we say that's a good Battletome? Because we say it all the time on this channel.
We do.
And I've got some pretty strong opinions about which ones are good and which ones are bad. And we're going to do the sorting tonight, by the way. We're putting on the sorting hat. And and people are going to go into those 2 buckets. They're either going to be bad or good. There's no middles.
I want to point out we have moved from the 4-quadrant, like nuance graded scale to like black and white with the show.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. We're going Weekly Planet style. Right?
Sure.
Yep. Where it's like best movie ever, worst movie ever. That's it.
Yep.
Okay. So, you talking about Kroigers again, Manny? All right, that's cool. They're cool. Everybody likes Kroigers. All right, let's start out with some things that we might be talking about, Tom, shall we?
Sure.
Okay. So when we talk about good tomes, we have to say, first off, I'm just going to lay this out as like blanket, is that if we're going to try to get at any kind of like, if we're going to try to get any sort of objective, I'm going to hint around that word, understanding of this, then we've got to come to, I guess, some kind of definition. But at the same time, we also have to admit that people will all define this differently for themselves. And just because we sort a thing into good or bad doesn't mean that somebody isn't going to love it, have a good time with it, think it's a good book, enjoy it, enjoy playing it. Like, there are people in the world, Tom, who think that KO book that's out right now is good.
That's unfortunate for them.
But they exist. Sure. I think they're lunatics. Like, certifiable. Right? But they exist.
Yep.
So, what actually matters here? So let's examine a couple of these. I want to get your take on them. So, Tom, does the overall power of the book matter into whether or not this is a good
book?
Yeah.
I think so. And what I mean by that is, like, if it's way, like, I don't think it's a primary determining factor, but I think that it is, like, if it is way out of whack, like, if it is way on either scale of over the top or way under, like, almost unplayable competitively, I think that does matter.
Okay.
In my opinion.
So if it's like, what you're saying is that there's a sort of band where if you pass outside of, you can't be good. It doesn't equal good by hitting that band, but it is necessary but not sufficient to exist within that band. Yeah?
Correct. It is like the SATs, it is a limiter. Like, it is not determinative of anything, but it will rule you out.
Sure.
If you go out of bounds.
If you don't hit a certain LSAT score, you're not getting into the T14. Like, that's it.
Right. And it's actually no judgment of your intelligence other than it is simply one evaluation among many that thins the herd.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. So it's like a sieve, right? Indeed. We're just okay. Cool.
Yep.
I can handle
because there can be the best book in the world.
Yep.
But if it's just over the top and it's no fun to play against, then playing it isn't going to be fun because no one's going to want to play you.
Okay. Yep.
And likewise, if you sit down and you've lost the game before it's even started, that's not going to be fun for anybody. Like, even Timmy's like to smash things. There's none of that happening.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So here's another one that we could use. Here's another perhaps item.
Sure.
Variability of the lists. Like, how many different lists that are interesting, compelling, competitive maybe, but, playable, right? Can I build out of this? And some of these are going to be linear. Some of them might be more modular, whatever. I don't care. But it's like, and we could define lists in lots of different ways. This is my ambush list. This is my, straightforward melee list. This is my board swamp list. Like, whatever. Okay, I don't care how you're defining it. It's just there's different builds, if you will, of the thing, right? That it facilitates that.
Yeah.
How much does that matter?
I think it is also important to me. Like, if I'm going to say that, so for me, if I'm going to say a book is good, it is not like monodimensional.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that's part of the problem with the KO book is that there are no other builds than skirmishy ship builds.
Well, this has been one of your complaints since the beginning with that book.
Right. Is that, like, I just don't have any other play styles. Like, technically, the Fire Slayer Barothring list could be a variable build, but even that, like, it's not really an alternate play style. Like, it is and it isn't.
Okay.
You're just diluting. Yeah. Anyways. Yeah. So for me, variability, there needs to be some degree of variability present.
Yeah.
But that can be defined a lot of ways.
Sure. Absolutely. I think this one does matter quite a bit because I think a monosyllabic book is dangerous, not just because you get sort of spammy type lists sometimes with monosyllabic books. That can often happen. But they don't always have to be. You mentioned KO, and that's not really a spam book. It's just kind of this is the obvious road, right? And
Sure.
I think it matters as well because a book needs to have sort of a discoverability to it, I think, to hold up over time, over the lifespan of the thing. You want to be able to maybe try different units out in different combinations. Like, part of the fun of this game is the list building. Now, people value that differently, of course, and that's fine, right? But I think it's a rare player that would just be like, that would just say, give me a single list. That would be happier, okay, if the book came with one pre-printed list of 2,000 points, and this is what you could play.
Yeah.
This is it.
Yep.
Right? This is the only way to play this thing. I think that would just fly in the face of everything we like about not only Age of Sigmar, but just wargaming in general.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so can I jump in on the comments real quick? Hades said, I don't think every army needs every option. I don't think that KO should have a real melee anvil, for instance. I agree. I don't think so either. But that's not what we're talking about. I'm not talking about every battlefield function fulfilled. We're talking about a variability of lists.
Yeah, sure.
And we're talking about, and so instead of unit play, we're talking about army play style. And one of the problems here is that KO has one army play style. There isn't another play style but skirmish shooting. Like, there is no gun line, which is a really funny statement to say, but in KO, there's no gun line in the traditional castling gun line sense. That doesn't exist. Or there's no strategy to win there because all the ranges are way too short to actually do what you need to do with that standard strategy. And so you have one option, one play style when you play that army, because of ranges of weapons and mobility and all that other stuff. And, like, sure, there may not be an anvil in that army, but there's also no melee hammers either. Like, so you don't have an option.
Sure. Yeah. It's totally agreed on the not every army should have every playstyle. We've talked about that a lot, but you should have more than one, right? That's the ultimate point. And so again, it feels like there's some kind of balance here, and it occurs to me that all three psychographic profiles take some value in the variability of lists, right? Timmy likes different experiences, likes and experiencing something new or different or interesting. And if it's the same list every time and that's all it is, eventually Timmy's going to get theoretically bored with that thing. Johnny is an innovator and loves list building itself. The very act of it is compelling, right? And Spike wants the list to be able to morph and adapt to stay competitive with the changing meta and other book releases and so on and so forth. Right?
Yeah.
So when you have some mix of different ways you can play, and again, broadly construed is the best way to think of this, right? Like, here's my sort of board swamp. I mean, this is one thing that gets, ironically, sort of has in its favor. They have a huge variability of lists. Now, we can talk about the power of the book and the balance of the book and all that, right? But you can go for a board swamp flood gets everywhere build, or you can have a pretty elite Troggoth build, right? Yep. So, like, there's the point, or some mix of there in between. Yeah. Now, they might all be melee lists, or mostly melee, I guess. You'd have some shooters or something in there. But it still feels like variability to the playstyle, and to the list you're building, to the units you're including, and to ultimately what your path to victory is. Okay. All right. Let me propose another one for you, Tom. The balance of the book. Specifically, we can split this into the internal balance and the external balance. All right.
Yep.
But let's start with internal. How much does the internal balance of the book matter?
I mean, to me, it matters because this has to do about the variability. If the internal balance is skewed all one direction where you only use 1 unit or 2 units, then there's going to be no variability of list building.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I mean, I think of something like, let's talk about maybe like Stormcast, right? This is the interesting one to bring up here with the internal balance, because there actually has been quite a few different Stormcast lists since that book came out. Lots of different units have seen play. Now, still, the total units that see regular play is low compared to the overall number of scrolls in the book, but is literally double what many books see played as far as just raw count number of scrolls, because they have so many. Right? They have 79 scrolls. And if 30 of those see play regularly, which is, in the space of the thing that sees regular play, you obviously don't have 30 different units in any one list. So that means there is quite a lot of variability here. But the internal balance is crap, because that means 40 War Scrolls are basically in the trash. Right? And just never considered, and trap units and bad for new players, and makes it hard for them to understand why it's good or bad, and so on and so forth. Right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I think this one's a real tough one, because I think it matters, internal balance specifically, right? I think it matters a lot, because the worst thing that you ever run into as a player, as a fan of an army, is when a unit that you really enjoy, or a model you really enjoy, however you want to think about it, sucks.
So it's funny. I was just having a conversation with some folks online this week about, I think it was yesterday, about Doomfire Warlocks.
Mm-hmm. The perennial uncared for sort of stepchild of an otherwise pretty internally balanced force.
Right. So and kind of the running joke was, some folks were painting him up, and I made a comment. They're like, hoping for someday with better stocks. And I was like, I painted up 10 in 2019. Mm-hmm. Because that's what I was hoping that too.
Sure.
And so now we just ride on diamond hands, to the moon. We just wait.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? And man, I hope someday they're good.
It's a hope. It's a good point. if you have a book with really bad internal balance, especially if there's one with a limited-ish number of war scrolls, let's say 20-ish war scrolls.
Sure.
You're in a lot of trouble. That's bad.
Yeah.
Because that's going to go and hit everything else. It's going to encourage more spam. It's going to reduce the variability of lists, right? And just a lot of things go off kilter at that point. I almost think this is like a root issue. I think this is another sieve. Being within a certain span of internal balance is another one of these necessary but not sufficient things. Like, it doesn't make it good on its own, but it's really important.
So here's a funny thing. Hades said, but I don't understand. On their own, Doomfires were actually a really good unit. And I would say, yeah, that's true. But the ecosystem they swim in, right? And this is why this matters, right? Mm-hmm. Is when you're actually comparing them to everything else and how everything else takes buffs and how the rest of that army functions, they're not comparatively a good unit. So this is where internal balance really matters.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting to me because of examples like Stormcast.
Yeah.
Where it feels like there's sort of enough. I'm not sure I'm going to call Stormcast a good book or not. I'm not spoiling anything here. I'm just saying, like, I'm not sure I disqualify it based on that alone. I think that makes it very bad for new players, which is dumb because it's supposed to be the new player book.
Yeah, right? There's a difference between this being bad for new players and being a bad book.
Sure, absolutely. My point is just like even though the internal balance is crap by most measures, i.e. 40 scrolls out of 79 or whatever are bad.
Right.
Okay, just like straight up not getting used.
Yep.
I'm not sure that would disqualify the book, because it's like there's a book and a half of decently internally balanced scrolls over here, and as long as you have enough experience to sort of separate the two piles,
Yeah.
you might be able to have fun with it, right? Or you might have, like, I had a great time playing a bunch of Stormcast, right? And using different lists.
Right.
So it can, in that case, just because of the weird nature of it, it sort of meets that. I wonder if cities might not be in the same exact boat. But it's interesting. All right. Okay. Let's talk about my favorite word. Verisimilitude, Tom. You knew I wasn't going to do a presentation without the word verisimilitude in it.
Sure.
How much it feels like the army in question. Yeah, Cygnus said it perfectly, by the way, in Stormcast. Bad by percentage, good by actual quantity. Yeah, exactly. Okay. How much it feels like the army in question. How much does this matter? Like, easy example. Let's make this real for everybody, okay? Old Nurgle Tome versus 3.0 Nurgle Tome.
Sure.
Old Nurgle Tome didn't really feel a ton like Nurgle. It was weird how it sort of played in this gamey fashion. It didn't really have many mechanics that made it feel very Nurgle-y. It was like one of the fastest books in the meta for no apparent reason. Whereas new Nurgle Battletome, very Nurgle-y, disgustingly resilient, disease points, slow but good in the attrition war. Like, no matter which lens or facet you choose to spin this rotten gem and look at it through, it's like you see Nurgle, right?
Sure.
So how much does that matter?
It's funny. I'm going to say it doesn't matter that much.
Okay.
And the reason why I say that is because as long as people know what they're getting themselves into, and they understand the play style, I don't think it's the end of the world.
Okay.
Like, some armies certainly do verisimilitude better. Like, I think about IDK, for example.
Yep.
Like, what they're supposed to be doing and how the rules play. Man, that is a banger. I think about Nurgle. It's the same type of thing.
Sure.
Khorne,
sure,
on the other hand,
yep,
is not that thing.
Nope.
And yet some people really like it.
Sure. But are we going to call it a good book? That is the question we'll have to answer.
Yeah.
Right?
And I yeah, I don't know is the answer. I don't know. I think if it is a factor, it's less of a factor for me.
Okay. Yeah,
so,
I mean,
I'm not trying to shit on top-down design.
Sure.
Right? But just simply acknowledge that at the end of the day, if I know what it is that I'm playing, it's just not as big of a deal if it's playing how I'm expecting it to, not necessarily how well the rules team has written rules to match the lore.
Okay. Here's what I'll say. I think for me, and I feel like I'm probably in the camp with most players, but I'm interested to see what the audience thinks.
Sure.
I think this one matters a lot.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is because ultimately, I think we get invested in an army because of a vibe. Like, we might search our brains for reasons why we play a particular army. We might say it's the models, or it's the rules, or it's the lore, or it's something. I just think that, like, I think Chaos Knights are like the coolest models ever, and so I'm going to run a whole army of them or whatever, right?
Yep.
But I think that actually all we do is vibe with an army. All right?
Sure. Okay.
I really think it's just like amorphous subconscious vibes. Like, yep. I can't explain to you, really, truthfully. I do not have the epistemological wherewithal to dig around in my brain and say why, when I looked at those little monkey-faced rats in 1999 and looked at the Skaven line, I thought, this is the coolest thing ever. And like saw their book, and it was the big bell. The dude on the old multicolored, like super pastel 90s cover, right? Yellow and red and everything and green. And I saw that book, and I saw those little weird dudes that still exist as Night Runners to this day somehow. And I was like, yeah, this is the coolest thing ever. Now, what about it got me? I don't know. I vibed with it. Right. And as I got into it more, it was just like more vibing. I just got deeper. And the stronger you resonate, it just keeps going.
But was the vibing because of the lore and the art, or was it play style? And
I have no idea.
That's what I'm okay. And
that's just it. I don't know. So I couldn't tell you truthfully.
So you're saying this is unknowable?
I'm saying it's unknowable. I'm saying we can generate reasons. Our conscious brain will easily generate reasons, and I am skeptical of them. I doubt myself, is what I'm telling you. Right?
No, and that's fair. I think it's a safe place to be. Because I agree with you. There are some things that I've just fallen in love with as an army, even if I hate playing it.
Sure. But when the when the verisimilitude hits, I think it strengthens that vibe. And that's what I'm saying. As I got into Skaven, and more things I found, what I can say is that I vibed with them even more over time. I can say that with assuredness, right? Because it's 25 years later, I still love that army. Yeah. I've loved it through vastly different sets of rules.
Sure.
Right? But something about it each time kept me going back to it. And so, and often, here's the one thing I will give those books credit for. Every single Skaven book that's been released since 5th edition has hit the verisimilitude of Skaven. To some degree or another. Now, the rules can be better or worse, competitively better or worse. Playstyles can be quite different, actually. But they all feel, for lack of a better term, Skaven-y.
Sure.
Right? And I don't know what that means, other than to say I know it when I see it.
Sure, of course.
Right? Some combination of like, it's a ton of dudes, and they ultimately die, and you don't care, and there's cool magic, and there's a lot of chaos, it's a lot of risk-reward, and just really interesting magic items and warpstone. And, I could list 100 things, big and small, ephemeral and not.
Yeah.
But that's just it. That's the verisimilitude of the book. And so it matters, I think, for people to stick with an army and to find a tome compelling.
Maybe.
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe. Because I can... Like, I think about, like, Gareth in the comments, who has said that, like, lore means nothing to him. Like, it's not a factor at all.
And I'm not talking about lore.
I understand.
Okay.
I understand. And that's where I was going to actually push back on his statement. Because verisimilitude is going to be deeper than that. I think the language of vibing is probably accurate. Because it's how much do you resonate with the thing and identify and really, like, because lore isn't going to keep people painting for hundreds of hours.
Right. It's got to be more than that. It's not just you read a story and you think it's cool. I have never read any of the Thankful books. Not a one of them.
Sure.
I could not care less.
Yep.
Right? Yep. Warhammer lore is dumb.
Right.
Okay. But I love Skaven stuff. Like, I like the feel, the vibe of the army. That's what I get. That's what I get into. My cold, black, icy, rotten heart just understands them and is like, yes, this is where I live.
Yeah, I mean, so for me, so let me take this back to another thing, right?
Yep.
I think there is a je ne sais quoi to this.
Yeah.
Because I think about high elves for me, right? And when we moved to Lumineth, it was the equivalent, and like I don't like. Let me relate it to D&D terms. It's the equivalent of moving from like the high elf race to bamboo spirit folk and Rokugan.
Yeah, sure. No, that's it. That's
I
a
mean,
perfectly, yeah, I get it.
Because that's what we got,
Yeah.
right? Those are elves-ish for that setting.
Mm-hmm.
But this is not that.
Tom, I was cracking some Neon Dynasty earlier today, and I saw them rat ninjas, and I was like, I'm back in immediately. Like, that's it. Because, like, even in other worlds, the power of rat ninjas of Skaven draws me in. Doesn't matter, right? Like, we can go to any setting we want. You show me a rat ninja, I'm like, yep, I'm on board. I'm back on board. What are we doing here? Let's get into it. What's the story here?
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Yeah, again, I had to invoke Rokugan where there's Nezumi.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, which is like my favorite thing to play in any instantiation of that that we've had, right?
Yeah.
From the original L5R through.
Yep. And so I think, like, so there is this unknowable, intangible piece of that, whether you call it vibing or whatever, right? Yeah. That of the degree to which we identify with the thing. And I think there's probably, like, it's a constellation of a bunch of factors. You know, you say it's unknowable. I think it's a constellation of a bunch of factors of, like, not reminiscing, but of nostalgia and of a bunch of other things that are all associated. Like, for me, I know a big piece of my love of High Elves is intimately related to playing Warhammer Online. Right. Yeah,
sure.
And so, like, when I see those, I, like, immediately identify with our days doing MMOs and raids and all that stuff. And so there's a piece of that army that I see that makes me resonate with them because it invokes those other experiences and memories and stuff like that.
Sure.
And so I suspect that that's a piece of this, right? For Ninja Rats for you. So yeah, maybe is the answer. Maybe that, like, that verisimilitude is a thing, but I don't know if I would use the language of verisimilitude.
Okay.
But I think what we've nailed down is there is this element of vibing that is relevant.
And I think if you're getting into everything else and then you get to the rules in a Battletome and they just feel like if you're building a vibe, right? Yeah. And then ultimately you get to the rules and they're like, boop, and they just shoot you off some other direction. You're like, wait, that's not what I've been feeling from everything you've shown me, told me, explained to me, thus far, right?
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying I think it matters if that tracks, right? When it breaks really hard, I think there's a pretty wide space here, like most of these things, right? Okay, let's get to a different one here. We talked about that one for a while, but it was a good conversation. All right, lack of NPE. Can a book that has NPE in it, like, to some significant amount, I mean, everything, blah, 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 but, like, whatever the amount of is, every book's allowed a little bit of NPE, but whatever the amount is that's, like, over the line, right? Whatever that means.
Yep.
Can a book have some material amount of NPE and still be a good book?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have an example?
Doc. I think Doc is a great example. I think Doc is a good book. It's a variable book. There's a lot of flexibility. It's been highly playable, very enjoyed, generally considered a success, and it has some of the worst NPE in the game.
Okay. That's not a bad example.
Because, like, again, like, some of the egregious NPE that we would point to normally would be things like Lumineth or things, and so those are harder to kind of identify. But I think Doc is a great example where it's been a hit, and some of the worst elements of that book have persisted between editions.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Amarathi's still doing what she does, and arguably she's worse now than she was before.
Sure. Yeah, she's got both. She got both selves on the board now.
Right. Exactly. So I would say that I think that a book can have NPE and still be a good book.
Okay.
Now, obviously, I think that's within reason. Like, if it's all NPE, then you're not going to get games.
Simon, it means negative play experience. The idea that no, it's okay. A couple people asked this question. What do I mean by NPE? Negative play experience. The way you win is by making the game actively worse for your opponents. And I don't mean like you killed their models or you took objectives and they couldn't. I mean, you are breaking the rules in a fundamentally non-interactive way.
Right.
So the classic example of this, if you want
Not
to pick
non
one.
non-interaction is one of the big keys for MPE.
Yep.
We've done entire shows on this.
Yes, it's not. It doesn't necessarily mean complicated. I will give you the example will illuminate. So, the fox in his original incarnation
I
from
was hoping you would go into
LRL.
Lumineth with that language. I
It's
was
the
hoping you.
easy. It's the easy take.
Yeah.
The fox was this skirmishy shooting unit who in the enemy shooting phase, which notably happens after movement but before charges, it happened at a very precise moment in time, could fly 12 inches. Meaning that an army of foxes, Fox Force 5, could fly up to an enemy, because they also could all move just oodles of inches, like a million inches they could fly across the board.
Yep.
They basically move like 36, 48, 60 inches in a turn, it depends. They will all just fly up to your line, sit 3 inches away from you, and shoot you. Like, just shoot the crap out of you. Whatever, it's fine. Right? And then when it came your turn, you couldn't move, because you had dudes 3 inches away from you. So you're blocked in. Right? And then when you go to your shooting phase, each of them jumps back 12 inches. So now they're 15 inches away from you.
Right.
And now you can't charge them either. It's all illegal charges. So your army sat there and did nothing. And if you're sort of a melee-only army with no out-of-turn movement capabilities...
Which not a lot of armies have.
Sure. Like, Ogres is the classic example of somebody who just got ultra-hosed by this, right?
Right.
You're just dead. You just lose the game. And there's nothing you can do about it. There's no interaction there. There's no play you can do. You're just generally screwed.
Maybe you can take shooting units, but those shooting units will get shot off by the foxes at the top of one. Right? Like that, because they can choose where all their shots are going into with their bow range. And they move back 15 inches. And let's say you double turn them. Congratulations. You get up 3 inches from them. And then at the end of your shooting phase, they move back 12.
They
back
flip away
15
again.
inches.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. There's no resolution here. There's no win. You have to have high enough mobility that you could pin them from multiple directions to catch one.
Yeah, ambushes and tricks like that you could just drop around.
Right.
And so, I reckon so too, Artorias. And also, yes, it is worth mentioning that is no longer how the fox acts, and that's a good change. They did kill them, and rightfully so.
Right.
It lasted way too long, but it is dead now. And see, that's why I think lack of NP, you're probably right. There's some amount you're allowed. And your dock example, I think, is a good one. But there's some kind of line here.
Sure.
Right? There's some kind of line.
Sure.
And maybe we could argue about where exactly that line falls and which books historically have fallen on this. I'll give you an easy one that's close to my heart. Slanesh 2019 probably fell on the bad side of this line.
Yeah.
Where it was like, charge me, I charge you, it doesn't matter, you're dead all the same.
Right.
In a meta devoid of shooting threats and high armor, where like all the books that were around were all low armor, no shooting, they just wanted to play a melee punch up in the center, and I could, on a 2-up for the first part of that book, make you go last.
Right.
It's irrelevant. Like, you're gonna die.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, Tzeentch has historically transgressed this.
Sure.
With not only them controlling their fate dice, but having spell dominance, and then things like either pink horrors or skyfires or whatever kind of the brokenness of the day was.
Yeah. Okay.
Like it is a collection of multiple things all adding to that. At that point, there's a level of MPE.
Yeah, there's like some kind of tipping point, right? Where it's like it can the balance can withstand some amount of NP, and then you hit some point, it's like boop.
Right. Like I think about like Lumineth, right? Like with Total Eclipse and Teclis, and like the handful like just ticking down, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
goading, so you can't fight me. I'm 6 inches away from you, and the sorrow
And
transfer,
boxes,
so
yeah.
you lost 1 model, now you lost 18. You bow your whole unit battle shocks off on a 2-up, like
And you can't
fun
be
like
immune
that.
to it. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can't be immune to it. Yeah, fun things like that.
Yeah.
All right, I've got one more amorphous one, Tom. This one's tough, but I left it for last intentionally.
Yep.
Here we go. You ready?
Yep.
Coolness factor. Okay.
I mean, that's vibing. Like, I don't see how this is different than vibing.
I'll tell you how it's different, because some armies are just cool. Whether or not you vibe with them personally, all right, some armies are just cool. They are. They're just cool. Like, they are. I don't know how else to say it. What makes something, okay, leave Warhammer aside, Tom, for a moment.
Okay.
Do you know people in your life who are cool?
Nope.
Yeah, you do. You know me. But the point is that what makes you cool is, like, I couldn't define that, but we've all met people who we think are pretty cool.
So it's
Pretty cool,
je ne
right?
sais quoi. Sure.
Sure. And, like, maybe it's just they're kind of metal. Maybe it's just the figs have some awesome sculpts to them. It could be a lot of individual elements that break down to something very real. Good sculpts, cool art, cool story. You know what I mean? Like, all those different things. Yeah. But there's this generic coolness factor. And an army's cool when it is. I don't know how else to say it, man.
I mean, I'm not buying it. Like, I hear that. I see this as all a factor of the degree to which people vibe with it. Because something that is cool or appealing to one person is just simply not to another.
Okay.
Like,
do you think...
So here we go.
Go for it.
I don't think that an army of all dragons is cool.
Yeah, sure. I can see that.
But I vibe with it.
Okay.
Right? But
Yeah.
or maybe even say it this way. I don't necessarily vibe with it, but I think it is cool. Like, for me, I want to have an army of all dragons because I think that's cool as, right? Like,
Okay.
I want that. I think that's cool. But that's not a universally, like, that's not a scale that is in any way accessible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, your point being that the difficulty of actually examining whether or not this thing is cool might prohibit it from being used as an evaluative criteria.
But you can't actually prove, you can't prove something,
Sure.
Yeah.
It either is or it isn't. Yes, it's sort of this weird tautology.
Right, exactly.
I gotcha. Yeah,
So,
I mean, here's
I think
my
that's
counterpoint.
my struggle with it.
Okay, here's my counterpoint. Let me see
Sure.
if this sells you. All right.
Okay, hit me.
Slaves to darkness. End of
Okay.
argument. Is there any doubt that most players of Warhammer think that army's pretty cool and full of pretty cool people?
Like, I vibe with it, though, so I don't, I vibe with it, so I think it's cool.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I bet there are a lot of people who don't vibe with it, but still think it's a pretty cool army.
But is that a necessary or sufficient condition for being a good book?
It's certainly not sufficient. That is definitely true. Okay. But, and I don't even think it's necessary. You're right. I don't. I'm not gonna defend either of those criteria, as a matter of fact. But I think there's something to it. All right.
Okay.
Because, I mean, Warhammer, almost conceptually from the ground up, is literally built on the fact that chaos is pretty cool. Right? Like, think of all the marketing ever and the images and the pictures they use. They're just like, man, look at these guys. Aren't they cool? That's it. Like, that's their marketing campaign. They just, like, their whiteboard is a picture of a chaos warrior and then an arrow that says cool. And that's it. That's the Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 marketing plan. Done.
I mean, you're
We're
not
going
wrong.
home early today, boys.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, I don't think it's I don't think it's determinative of it being
Okay.
a good book.
Okay, that's fine.
Because like I don't find ogres like cool.
Sure.
But I think it's a good book.
Sure.
Like nothing in Dad Bod like Grill Masters tells me that that's cool. And yet
Dad Bod Grill Masters. Like
yes,
nice.
they are, right?
I like nope, it checks out. All checks out.
But it's a good I think it's a good book, and so I don't know to the degree to which that is equivalent.
Okay.
Or that's relevant.
Maybe it's just a spice. Right? Maybe it's like a spice on top.
I still think it's a verisimilitude thing. Like I think it's how well people vibe with an army.
Okay. Good enough. All right, cool. Good discussion. All right, Tom, are you ready to put on the hat, the sorting hat?
Oh, I was born ready to make snap judgments about
let's judge. All will be judged. By the way, some of these are the old covers because I have an image file of all these books and I didn't bother to update a couple of them. I was like, whatever. I know new ones exist. I don't care. I don't have time.
Sure.
Okay. Here we go. Understanding everything we just talked about. Now it is time to sort. So let us sort these books into good or bad. There shall be no middle ground. Nobody's hanging on the middle line. It either is good or it's bad. Now you can be more bad or less bad. I'm okay with that. We'll allow a little bit of nuance.
No, we're not doing any nuance here. There's no higher or lower bads. It's either good or bad.
Okay.
It's blue or red here. We're not nuancing anything.
We lack nuance in this show. We are assigning values. All right, I'm going to still say there's some nuance. But anyway, here we go. Let us begin. Tom, Night Haunt. We begin with your ghosty boys.
Good.
Where do they sit? I just realized something very annoying. I didn't bother to test that particular element. That's very annoying.
You're not going to bother to do that?
And now I got to fix something live. Tell me why. Why are Night Haunt good? I do want to explore this and talk about our reasons for it. Okay? Like, why is this good? Because I want to see if we get to I want to see what we uncover when we make the rubber meet the road here.
Sure. So rather than academic assessment and categorization, you want to actually see how this gets manifested. Sure.
Yeah.
If wide model range, compelling models,
but that's
variable.
What's the
list.
Battletome doing, right? Because we're talking about the Battletome here. Okay.
Right.
So it's not necessarily like having a big model range or cool models. That's great for the overall army. If we were going to say, well, like, what makes an army good, right? But here, the Battletome, it would be like, well, it lets you use all those models.
Right.
Okay.
Correct. There are models that are functional and usable across the book. There's a wide variety of build styles. Even if sub-factions corner you into particular builds, there's still a huge variability. It does not have too much outrageous MPE, but it does a thing, and it does that thing really well. There's a verisimilitude, like the thing that you are.
Yeah, you feel like you're playing Spooky Boys, that's for sure. Yes.
Right. And it's just, and they're just cool.
See, I told you it was a factor. See, you want to use it. We all want to use it, Tom. Okay. You can fight it all you want, but the coolness factor is real because, again, it's how humans think. I don't know what it is, but we do. Yeah. I agree. This one's good.
But some people are saying like models don't matter. Bullshit. There's a reason why I'm not playing Beastmen. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, sure. And it's because most of the models are trash. Sure. Sorry, Beastmen players. I know that you guys love your army. Cool. Most of the model line's trash. Guess what? Most of Seraphon is trash. Sure. You can just chuck all of those 90s models out the window.
Okay. So here's what I'll say. To me, as a Battletome, this definitely falls in good because it meets all the criteria. Like, it passes through all the civs we talked about. Sure. Right? There's a pretty decent internal balance. Yes, there are some trap units. Hello, crossbows. But a lot of different units are usable, right? And the feel of the army, the verisimilitude, dead on, right? Like they nailed it with this one. You feel like you're playing these terrifying ghosts with your various rules that you've got.
Yep.
So internal balance, decent, not perfect. Verisimilitude, extremely high. It falls in the spectrum we mentioned of being competitive or powerful or whatever, right? It's not too powerful. It's not too weak.
Yeah.
It's in there. It passes through that okay, right? So check down the line, right? Yep. And to me, that's what makes it a good tome. There's another element that I purposefully didn't put on that last page because I wanted to save it we'll discuss it after we do the sorting. But there's a quality to the way the rules are written.
Sure.
Okay.
Like a nuance. Yeah, and a discoverability.
Yeah. When you read this book, you get it. It doesn't take multiple reads. You generally understand what's going on. Like, yes, it's not a perfect book. I do agree with you, CW, that the sub-factions are challenging in this. It's actually, like, I would say the Achilles heel of this book. But that being said, it doesn't overwhelm it for me. Because, sure, you, like, are encouraged to take a lot of Bladegeist Revenants in one build or Dread Scythe Harridans in another, but at the same time, that's not every sub-faction. There are plenty of people playing Emerald Host and using a mix of different things and having a good time.
Sure.
That doesn't encourage anything. So there is still a variability of lists. Like, that's... And even if every sub-faction encouraged spam of a different unit, but every one of them was competitive in some way or within the balance or, something like that, then we'd still meet variability of lists, right? Because you just swing sub-factions around.
Right.
Okay. So by every bar, it seems to pass every bar. And to me, the final sieve you've got to pass through is, are your rules sensible, comprehensible, understandable? And I think some books really miss on this. Like, there are some books that the rules are written in such a way where they're full of, like, memory traps and they're complex, like, overtly complex in how you're interacting with them. Right. Yeah. And you look at it and you're like, this is just too much. This is not good. Right? Because I don't want to go to all this trouble to do this thing, right? You end up with Rift's rules in some of these books.
Sure.
Right? Where it's just like overcomplicated to the point of nonsensory. And even though everything else is good or passes the sieve, I think that can also decap it. Right? Okay, cool. Nighthaunt in the good category. Totally agreed. All right, next up, Ogre Maw Tribes. Tom, what's your vote? Good or bad?
Good.
Totally agree. Why are we putting ogres in good?
Like, it does everything that I want it to. It has variability. It has interesting. It has a couple of trash models, but that's fine. It is not cool to me, but at the same time, like, it's something that I could be like, yeah, I could buy 2,000 points and paint those up. It'd be fine.
Sure.
Right. So to me, there's also this, like, aspect of, like, would I be like that? To me, that's almost the final test of a good book is, like, would I buy this army?
Okay. Yeah, for me, I look at this one and it's interesting because with the newest tome, I really like it, but boy, are there a couple glaring weaknesses, but they're not enough to make me say it's not good.
Sure.
The book has decent internal balance. Decent. Sure. It's a lot more decent on the Gutbuster side than it is on the Beastclaw Raider side.
Sure.
Okay. And because of that is inhibiting to some degree the variability of lists.
You know what they're missing?
Oh, go ahead. What are they missing?
A Samoan subfaction, like a fire-oriented Samoan subfaction.
Sure. Need to expand out that fire belly. He's just sitting there,
some
asking
islanders,
for friends.
Yeah, some Pacific Islanders. That's really what they need to really balance out the Frost Ogres.
I would love it if they explored an entire new subfaction of ogres. Like if that was a sort of Cruel Boys expansion, right? Where we had like
right,
sure,
right,
yeah, absolutely, 100%. We've said it. We've talked about the sort of Pacific Islands themed ogres built around sort of the fire belly as the template for the aesthetic before, and yes, I do think it could be the Cruel Boys of ogres, only hopefully not, bad. But I do think it's a little low on the variability of lists, because there are some things that you feel like, well, I should just take this, obviously. Now I'm not sure that'll stick. I'm sure that some things will move around. Like I fully believe that the age of the Iron Blaster will not last forever. Okay.
Well, and I think a big piece of this as well is like part of we've evaluated these books only in the current meta, with the current GHB kind of like looming and putting pressure on the meta and the evaluation of these books. And I don't know that that's necessarily fair, especially if it's not going to be sticking around.
Sure. But at the same time, verisimilitude, just an absolute win. You feel like you're playing these big, powerful ogre monsters between mortal wounds and the monster truck drifting over people and yada, 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 yada. Hungry and eating and like on and on and on, right? The verisimilitude's a huge hit. Power-wise, yeah, it's in the spot. It's in the spot, right? It didn't fall out. And the rules are good. Like you read them and you're like, yeah, okay, good, got this, understood. I get what's going on here. I understand the concept. Okay, cool. Let's keep going. Stormcast Eternals, Tom. Where are they going?
It's a good book for me.
Okay, why is it a good book?
Because it has variability of lists. It has a variability of play styles.
Mm-hmm.
It has interesting, engaging, like power pairs. And I know that sounds silly, but when we're talking about this idea of variability, each of those different, like the way you pair things up is going to dramatically change play style. I think it appeals to all the different player types, Johnny's, Spike's, and Timmy's. I think that if anything, it's a little bit boring model wise, and for me, like that kills the cool factor.
Sure.
And so that cools me off on it, just because from a model standpoint, like a lot of their models are just lackluster.
Yeah.
Right. But I still think that I think it's a good book.
I think I'm gonna put it in good as well, but I'll tell you, like I can't say it's bad when I had so much fun playing it for so long and played so many games with it. I think it is probably the lowest performance I would accept for a passing good grade. You understand what I mean? You're in here, you passed, but you are like, this is that's it.
Don't get comfortable, right?
Right. You are at the bottom of the line. You scraped by. Internal balance, as we mentioned earlier, big challenge. Power level is generally fine. It's fine.
Yep. No MPE, or very little now.
Yeah, very little now. Obviously, it had a little challenge when it started with the whole movement after teleporting thing, but that was quickly rectified.
And dragons hero phase breathing.
Another excellent dragons hero phase, double shooting, blah 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 nonsense. Double shooting over the course of their turn.
Yeah.
But most of that has been rectified out now, so fine.
Sure.
So I think that like it's relatively within the power band. I think the verisimilitude's quite good.
Yep.
You do feel like you're playing Sigmar's Chosen, between the lightning strike down and the explosion back up and how hard some of these guys hits. Like they feel like the Thunder Warriors of Sigmar,
Yep.
They bring the storm for sure. So I'm good with that. I'm good with that. Okay. Yeah, I don't think there's much more to say on it. They're the minimalist passing grade. They hit just enough in most of these categories for us to be like, okay, you're good. All right. Next up, IDK, Tom. This is the tough one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Talk me through your thoughts. Say it out loud. Speak your truth.
I struggle. Like, it's tough because I think that the viability or the performance of that book is heavily slanted based on the meta that we've been in.
Yeah, sure.
And so I don't think that we've actually gotten to see how well it performs away from bounty hunters and all of that.
Because
Like,
of
not
thralls
really.
being such a major part of the army and being effectively just cut out of the equation in the last GHB
And so
cycle.
internally, it's interesting to me, the book. Internally, I like what it offers. The model range is ultimately beautiful, if that's what you like. And again, notice I keep going to the models as well. And so like,
it's not part of this, but I get it.
I'm not going to buy a book, right?
If the models are bad. I understand.
Recommend a book to people if the models.
But you
are
could
bad.
have a good tome on a bunch of bad models. That doesn't mean you would want to buy it, but it could be a good tome.
But again, this is then cool factor is not in there, because for me that immediately makes something uncool.
I see.
If it has trash models.
Sure. Okay.
And so like that's so like yeah. So if we're gonna include cool, then to me the models have to be part of it.
Okay. All right. I get where you're going.
I mean, what I would say is this: I don't think that we can. I don't think that we can assess. I don't think we've had an honest assessment of it. Okay. I think that to me, it's interesting. I think that it's. I think that it's a good book with not too much MPE, but it prevents some interesting challenges in some of the units. So, like, there are things that demand answers that I wouldn't necessarily classify as MPE.
Yep.
And I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing.
Sure.
And so to me, I think it's a good book.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. This one clearly falls in good book category. Not as good as Nighthaunt or Ogres, but good. It's, for similitude factors, pretty high. But you feel like you're playing this aquatic race that flies in on the Ether Sea.
Yep.
You know, good mechanics that support that. Internal balance is pretty decent. Again, I agree with you. I think it would be stronger outside of the current season. I think that's really hurt it. But overall, yeah, I think it's in the zone for power and for internal balance. I think once we exit this GHB, it's going to feel really internally balanced. There are still some problem units there, but of course. So to me, all of that is in the right spot, right? Whether you're taught, like, I agree with you, not too much NPE. For similitude, good. Internal balance, pretty good. Power, pretty good. You know, everything's kind of there. It's humming on all cylinders. Sure. It's getting like a solid B on everything.
Sure.
On all the possible things you could get scored on, right? You know, you teach. So I'm sure you have like factors that make up your grade. Like your grade at the end of the term is like 10% based on this and 30% based on this and 50% based on this, or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right? And to me, that's kind of what we built with that first part, right? Now I don't know what those percentages are.
Our rubric, yes.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And to me, it's got like, if I were to fill out its rubric, I would just be like, you get a B. You're not amazing. You didn't blow me away, but it's good. It's a solid. You've done solid work. Right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And it's a good implementation of this concept. It feels like the thing. All right, good. Let's pick a fun one here, Tom. You ready?
Yep.
Ba-boom! Ossiarch Bone Reapers. See how I said fun and then picked OBR just to throw you off?
Yep. It's a bad book.
It is a bad book. It's super a bad book. Come on, what are we talking about? Of course it's a bad book.
It's a bad book.
Yes.
It I will go no farther than to say it doesn't follow any of the normal rules, any of the core rules regarding allegiance abilities.
Okay.
Like for the command abilities and stuff like that. And ultimately, like, it's a book of 9 swords testing out 3rd edition. You know, like, it's a non-starter. Like, I'm sorry.
No, I agree. Look,
I
think this one's actually pretty simple.
Yeah.
Power-wise, it has often had problems on either side of the scale, on both sides of the scale over the course of its history.
Of course.
Which is really something to say.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
Internal balance is really bad.
Yep.
Okay. There are units in that book that just, at many points in time, all points in time, in the case of some units, just don't see the table. Don't get built. Don't get played.
Yeah, some of those heroes. Yeah.
And although the verisimilitude is decent, like it's supposed to be this militaristic tactical force, you feel nothing but handicapped by that alleged rule set that's supposed to be empowering that in 3.0. The rules design on it is so overwrought.
Yeah.
It feels like an alpha version of the current rules, which are already complex. And this is like the more complex version of the super complex game we're playing.
Yeah.
And CW, Tom and I love the Book of 9 Swords. That's not a negative judgment. It's just a statement of fact that it was, Book of 9 Swords was a playtest for 4th edition. Yeah. Like, we both got so much mileage out of that book. We were all in on Book of 9 Swords. If we would have just stayed in 3.5 and kept, like, ideas like Book of 9 Swords around, we would have been fine.
Yeah. No, that's true.
Okay. So, yeah, I agree. Like, this is an easy slam dunkaroo for me. All right. Next up, let's do a fun one. This is the old cover, I apologize, but we know what it is. Slaves to Darkness. Is this the goodest book, Tom?
I mean, it's a good book.
It's a good book.
Yeah,
it's a great book. It's definitely in good. Right?
Yep.
Like, on the new book feels like a great variability of lists. Feels right, like it's in the power zone. Doesn't feel like it's overpowered, doesn't feel like it's under. Pretty decent internal balance for as many scrolls as it has. There really are some whiffs in there. There are some things that are problematic. Hopefully those get adjusted. Like, there's a few proud nails here and there.
Mm-hmm.
But man, is it pretty darn decent. Like, well-defined roles for lots of units. The internal balance feels, like, sharp. Right?
Yep.
And the verisimilitude of things like the new Eye of the Gods table is incredible.
Sure.
Right? It's incredible. So, like, I don't know what else I would say. It's a great book.
Yep.
Like, I mean, I'm in for this one. I think it's fantastic.
Agreed.
Okay. All right. Caradron Overlords, Tom.
Bad book.
Bad book. Why? Why is it a bad book? Why is it the baddest book? Or fighting for that title?
I mean, I wouldn't say it's the baddest book. I would say that it is monosyllabic with regard to play style. It is it has continually played in the MPE space in a variety of ways.
Yep.
Like, in that, it hasn't always been that, but it just, like, we just can't get away from either the turn 1 alpha or the or spell in a bottle now that can't be unbound and gets to cheat in anybody's endless spells, or
sure.
Right, or table wide D3 damage mortars, right? Like, it keeps going.
Yeah, sure. It's like a greatest hit list of how to write a bad book. I would also point out the rules are just insane, like, in how they're all structured on top of each other.
Yeah, like, let's not forget that it was the example, the thing that spurred a change in War Scroll, the first time ever a change in War Scroll 3 months after the book dropped.
Sure.
This is the first time we ever had that. Not with this book, but the prior edition. But the point is that it has just perennially been, it's missed its mark.
Yeah. This book, if you remember, I put together a rant of 20 things I thought were bad about this book when it came out, right?
Yeah, you did. Yeah. Like, I didn't, like, some of our audience probably doesn't remember this, but I didn't go off. It was just a resigned disappointment, and I just let you rant, right? Yeah. Because me, you, and Gary Percival, right? Like, because it was just so disappointing. And the fact that, like, everything is conditional if ands, like, just army list building is a nightmare with this book.
Right.
And now it's even worse because now we have the key war scrolls aren't even in the book.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have a white dwarf in order to actually function for your additional ammunitions and stuff like that from the Admiral. So I just... Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Next up. Sylvaneth. New Sylvaneth.
It's a tough one. I would say that it's a bad book. Right. And the reason why is that most of my, like, none of my Sylvaneth players that I know really want to play the book.
Okay.
And that's just that's a weird kind of litmus test. But when I watch my Sylvaneth players, when I have one of my guys that the commission that I do, I'm painting up his Sylvaneth, and he's like, nah, you can just put literally the thousands of points of stuff you're painting on hold and work on the Slaves at Darkness stuff.
Sure.
Like, that says something. Like, it says something about Slaves of Darkness stuff, but it also says something about Sylvaneth. That it's not generating the play experience that that community wanted.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this one might be one where we disagree. To me, I think, again, like Stormcast, it has to fall on the good book side. Like, when I evaluate it by the criteria that we set up, or the potential civs, it's certainly in the power level. It's had some challenges, but that's a lot of books when they come out have some challenges. They weren't insane. It wasn't like it suddenly went on a 5-0 run, like, the launch of Tzeentch back in 2020, right? It wasn't that.
Yep.
It does, like, verisimilitude-wise, it scores quite high. You do very much feel like you're playing this strike and fade forest force. You're making trees, you're overgrowing terrain, you're popping your units in and out of them. Internal balance wise, it's not bad. It's probably middle
When was
ground.
The last time that you saw Revenant sprites?
But again, if we're gonna give IDK the exception, Spite Revenants have a lot of potential, but they're dead in the water in the current season.
Right.
And, like, I've seen lots of people try Spite Revenants, if that's what you're gonna ask me. It's just they got bounty hunted off the table.
Right. And, like, my point is that most of that stuff just isn't, like, all the lists inevitably look the same. Some bugs, some trees, or some Kurnoth, and then a Piper in the woods.
Yeah, I don't know. I honestly don't know. I don't think I agree with that. I've seen some pretty good variation in the lists of what people are doing. And I think that's only going to increase over time.
For me, like, the MPE, like, the trifecta of MPE in that book is something that, like, I can't, like,
which is what, like, strike and fade, certainly.
Strike and fade.
Mm-hmm.
Board wide AOE.
So yeah, the Spell Singer combo, yes.
Spell Singer combo. And putting trees on the table.
Sure. Clogging up with terrain.
Yeah. Nope. Like, no, thank you. I'm just not interested. Like, I don't want to play Sylvaneth players.
Yeah. Tell you what, we've
yeah.
come to a disagreement, but I'm gonna since I've got the mouse, I'm gonna rule. I'm gonna put it in the bottom of good. So that's what happens. But I get it. Like, you know, I completely get what you're saying, because I can see how you'd come down there. I just think it's got just enough. It's down there with Stormcast. And by the way, Manny had said, you know, we said no nuance, and here we are. You know, I'm separating them out, and I'm like, hey, Tom said that, not me. I never agreed to that. We always have some nuance on this show. Otherwise, this would be a short segment. This one, good or bad? Yes, done. Next.
I thought that's what we were doing. Just aiming for the hour and a half show. Yes.
We're going for a quick show tonight. We're going to be quick. I know you don't feel super well. All right, Corn. What do we got?
It's a bad book.
It's a bad book. Why is it bad?
Because it's I'm gonna pull your term. The verisimilitude isn't right.
Yep,
It feels like a coordinated dive team. What are those people called? The synchronized.
I have no idea what you're going. Oh, synchronized swimming. Okay.
It's like an exercise in synchronized swimming,
sure.
Right? For units, as you're lining up charges and doing your things. I mean, the mechanic's neat, but it's still like detrimental because you have to cash fully out. So there's not even.
Well, you don't have to cash fully out anymore, but you did for a long time. Sure, I take what you mean.
For you. Well, that was eroded though. That wasn't in the most recent book, was it?
It is. Yeah. You don't cash out right now.
Sorry.
It was a White Dwarf.
Right, I thought that was that's what I'm saying. But that was a White Dwarf. Like if I pick up the book and read it,
sure,
you cash out right now.
Correct.
Right. So like
that's obviously not the rules, but yes.
To make it playable, they had to add things from other books and magazines. Let me just tell you, if I have to bring a magazine to a book, it's not a good book. If the book doesn't stand on its own,
sure,
for even going into a new edition, but just in the old edition, and you've had to add dragon magazines or extensive erratas
sure.
to make the book playable,
sure,
it's not a good book.
Yeah. I mean,
and that's Corn.
I got it. I agree. It's definitely a bad book. I understand why there are some diehard people who love this book. You know, Gareth's in the chat right now, and I know he loves this book. Our friend Konstantinos obviously loves this book because for a certain flavor of Johnny, right, this hits all the buttons.
Yep.
But to me, there's no way you would call this a good book if you step back from that. Its internal balance is terrible. Its overall competitive power has been generally bad when you put it outside of the hands of extremely skilled players who know how to like really utilize every single lever in there because the skill floor on it is just at the ceiling.
Right.
The verisimilitude is complete and total trash. So yeah, I mean, it's that easy. Cool. All right, next. Thank you. Next. Flesh Eater Quartz. Flesh Eater Quartz. Good book or bad book?
I'm gonna say it. I think it's a good book.
I'm glad you came down that way because that's where I was gonna go too. I thought I'd be alone on this one. No, I think it's a good book.
No, I think it's a good book. I mean, I say that like my son has a Flesh Eater Quartz book, and so I have exposure to it, right?
Yep. Yeah.
And
sure.
What's there, and even in the new edition, it's a good book. I like it.
Yeah, it's got obviously some big challenges as far as power level goes. It's clearly like it's kind of spun a lot.
Yep.
When it first came out, it was very high, breaking like too high. Now it's kind of low, breaking too low. It's an old book, but
yes, as Haywo said, it's an old book. But I think it's a good book.
But I do think it is good. It's fun. It's very comprehensible as to what the strategy is. The verisimilitude feels pretty right. We talked about, how we want to see them bring out the concept of like the madness more, Tyler and I last week. And I think you really could write more rules that build that verisimilitude up. But they certainly feel like ravenous ghouls. That is certainly on the mark.
Yep.
It's
a wide model range that has a lot of play.
A wide model range? Oh, you mean internal balance wise? That most things in there get played.
And
Yeah,
what I
sure.
mean by
it's a
wide,
very
I don't
small
mean like,
range, but they all
I
get
don't
played.
mean, but everything gets played, and everything
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
has a function, and like there's a purpose for everything.
Yep. Yeah, yeah. You see people run tons of ghouls. You see people run the knights. You see people run the Vargulf. You'll see people run obviously the Kumquat, the Ghoul King on Terrorgeist or on Terrorgeist. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
So yeah, I mean it's a good book. It just like they did a good job. It makes me excited for a new version of the book.
Right.
Because
it just needs updated because it's a great book. Like it's a good concept, and like they have great bones. Bring it up to the new edition, clean it up, tighten some things, get rid of your rerolls. You're good.
Yeah, and make their allegiance abilities work. And like I said on the show last week, invest some more into making us feel like we're what we talked about last week, Tom. Because I'm sure you didn't watch the show.
I watched half of it.
Oh, okay, good. It would be neat if you actually like if in their special abilities or in their allegiance abilities, whatever, they kind of had like two names. So you had to like pick a holy quest, and it was like save the damsel, consume all the flesh, or something like that. And it was like, but it was the same rule for both, like the same challenge, special mission agenda, whatever you had. But it was like how they think they're doing it, how it's really happening, kind of thing. So
yep,
feels like that'd be a winner. All right, ba-boom, ba-boom. Fire Slayers.
It's a bad book.
I agree. Why is it bad?
Because it's functionally monodimensional, and what I mean by that is it's not monosyllabic. Because there are two ways to play. Not
okay. It's duosyllabic.
Like, yes. Because you can either do Magmadroths or you can do foot troops, one of the three foot troops, which is just really one of the two, either Oryx or Hearthguard, right? And there's not really a multiplicity of play styles per se. It's just those two. The model range is just boring. It is. I mean, some of the mechanics are fine, but it's just very predictable. Like when you play it, when you're playing against it, you know exactly what's going to happen every turn against the opponent. Like what runes are going to trigger, like what's going to happen next.
Sure.
It's just not interesting. And it doesn't help that not only are the units not having a kind of a distinct role and function, but they're boring.
Sure.
Like the actual like models themselves, which doesn't help.
Yeah, I think this one's the top of bad. Right? It's bad.
Yeah,
but it's
I would agree with that. I would agree with that. Like if you added 3 additional units with strong mobility and some interesting other play, I think that it could be really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that we whiffed on the internal balance when we basically have 3 units.
And when I say 3 new units, I don't mean 3 new heroes. Like 3 real actual units.
Yes.
That are doing real things.
Absolutely. But that's what I'm saying. The fact that we whiffed on internal balance when we have effectively 3 non-hero units, that says everything you need to know about whether or not it's a good or bad book. I mean, that's it. That's the whole shooting match almost. Because once that's off kilter, again, the variability of lists goes way down.
Yeah.
Right? Like everything else falls off. That's it. It's that simple. Okay. Let's keep going. Soulblight Gravelords. Our last book of 2.0.
I think it's a good book.
Okay. Why so?
I kind of flippantly said that like one of my metric or my evaluation is like, would I be willing to play it? And I'm literally starting I probably have 5,000 points of Soulblight in box that I haven't built yet.
Sure.
And I think that it's like there's a variability of play. There's interesting models. It's the verisimilitude of like vampire lords leading hordes of undead. Like all of that is things that people can latch onto and relate to, and they get it. The necromancers and all the things, right?
Yep.
And so it speaks volumes to the again, it's been variously competitive throughout the ages.
Mm-hmm.
There's not just been one build. There's been multiple builds that went 5-0. There's a vast, like a deep bench of heroes, of named heroes that are actually like good like all of them.
Yeah, that are interesting, compelling. You want to put on the
Yeah.
table. Yeah.
Yep, and there's reasons for each of them. I think more than any other book, their named heroes are clutch. Like I can list off the top of my head 8 named heroes that are all viable that I would put in a list.
Sure.
At least 8, which is not insignificant, right? Like that's like I don't know any other book that can accomplish that with named heroes.
Yeah. By the way, I agree with Artorius Rex, who says Soulblight is a perfect example of an army that's almost objectively cool, but lots of people don't vibe with. I agree. Like this army's cool. It just is. It's cool. You look at it, it's got that quality. That's cool. That's cool stuff. All for all the things you mentioned and more. Right?
Yeah.
So I dig this one too. We've been big stands of this. I think it is a bit overwrought. I think there is some whiffs on the internal balance, but I think it's decent overall. Power level's right in the right space. Verisimilitude is pretty strong. Rules are, like I said, a little overwrought, but they're not bad. Right? I mean, it's certainly within the bounds.
Right.
Okay. Cool. All right, next up, Tom, Beasts O Chaos. Still riding that very old book, oldest in the current meta.
It's
where
trash.
we living.
It's
okay.
Trash. And like I say that like ironically as one who has basically bought a beast army in the last like 2 months. And the funny thing is that but it's because I want to play Zangor. Like it's not all of the beast army. It's because there's a very narrow thing I want to play. And I can do that in either Beast or Tzeentch. But the reality is that as a whole, it is just uninteresting to me. It has, and like in your review last week, you guys did an excellent job assessing the problems of Beast, which it's just a bag of hammers and most of them are bad. And so it doesn't have a variability of play style, and it's just all fairly straightforward. My one critique of you guys last week said that like there's just no range in this army. Like you were pretty hard on that and said basically there's like
I'm not counting Ungor Raiders and Sidewars.
No, but
and or spitting cockatrices. Sure,
Skyfires are a real shooting unit with high mobility. That does.
I will accept the Skyfires, sure,
but it's not like a mass shooting. But it is a real shooting unit that has real threat. But that's the point, right? Like that's all in Zangor, and that was kind of my comment, right? Is that like the only good stuff is the new models from that overlap with Tzeentch, in my mind. Okay. Or it's a bunch of bad models that are over. The only reason why people play them are the rules are bent. That like it's not because there's a coolness to them. It's because shit's broke. And the final nail in the coffin for me is that in order for it to even be a functional book, it had to be printed in White Dwarf for that war scroll.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I'll give this book credit for a lot of interesting ideas, but it just didn't manifest into anything. Like, ultimately, I agree with all of your points. Low on, like, power level, this thing has had horrendous problems, falling outside the bar on both sides, being, like, one of the worst and now broken. Yeah. Somehow those have both been true because of that White Dwarf update. Yeah. Internal balance is obviously garbage. Verisimilitude's decent, but it's not enough to carry the whole book. Like, again, it had some good ideas, but nope. Thank you. Next. Cities of Sigmar. Cities O Sigmar. I'm interested for your take on this one, Tom.
I think it's a good book. I think that you have a vast diversity of play styles. I think that, and there are units that match that. I think the book, it was overwhelming, the number of units. I think that in general, there wasn't a good balance from the standpoint of like internally. I think that like there were clear winners and losers like Phoenix Guard, like Iron Drake, stuff like that. But at the same time, I think that there was a very significant like here's a great example. I considered making like an all Drake spawn.
Yeah, sure.
Like like
Dark
orders
elf
for
army.
peoples.
Yep.
Right. I don't consider that unless it's moderately competitive.
Mm-hmm.
Like that I can actually see performing and doing well with the right synergy, and the key is like there were always those tools in the book.
Sure.
And so from a rule of cool of being able to customize and convert to the vast play style differences that you saw in the different cities, like it was real. Like a magic city and like a shooting skirmish city and or a mobility city and then a skirmish, woodsy city and a like a more rank and file, like all of those things had their own place in that book.
Okay.
And so to me, it really banged on all cylinders, even though it was a majority of old models. I did feel like it had an identity.
Okay. I'm going to put it at the bottom of good. And the reason I'll let it sit down here is because, again, I think it's almost like a story of BOC. It had a lot of good ideas, but it did just enough of them, just well enough.
Yep.
To be okay. I like the way the cities were fundamentally concepted, and the way that they change. It feels like very different armies when you play that way. I like the concepting around power pairs. The execution has been off at various points in time on this. Cities has never been truly broken. It's kind of always been in the power, mid-power range, sometimes with some lists being like frankly too good and needing a little bit of reining in. But still, even then, they weren't like running slipshot. It has a lot of complexity to it, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you'll remember, when this book came out, we said that this was the pinnacle of design.
Absolutely. And I think that, like, I'm glad we've shown that there was, in fact, more mountain above this. But I do think it still holds up. It's still good, right? Because all the ideas in there, I don't think, like, retroactively, we've seen how much better the execution can be.
Yeah.
But I can't go back and retroactively unmake the fact that I like the way the cities work. I like the way it incorporates the feeling of those different cities, the way it utilizes power pairs to allow you to, combine a different force, different units. I mean, I've played against a ton of cities because one of my friends, if he's not playing, he plays Lumineth cities, right? Those are the two things he plays.
Yep.
And
or
he,
both.
like, the internal balance certainly is a challenge. Like, it's certainly a challenge.
But I would argue that the internal balance is solved in the power pair concept.
Yeah, I'll say this, it's like, eased. I don't know if it's solved, but it is perhaps treated a little bit, right?
Sure. Like what I would say is that I think that is the solution to this type of like wide spanning book. Like when you have this many units,
agreed,
and this expansive, this is how you have to design the book. I just think
gotta go power pairs.
Yeah, but I think that like, but what it was when it launched, I think it was a good book. I really do. And even in third edition, it still holds up, is what I would say. Even though there's room for improvement now, I think it still holds up, and I think that speaks volumes.
Yep. Okay. All right. Next up, Seraphon.
What?
Seraphon. Lizard people. Oh, I get it now. I get your joke. Sorry. All right, I'll handle this one. It's the top of bad, since Tom believes this army should be unmade. Seraphon's the top of bad, and I'll tell you why. Power-wise, this thing has been off-kilter since the jump. And it's been off-kilter in a ton of different ways. We keep squashing what's too powerful, and then new problems pop up, right? This thing is just deep riven. It's riddled with it, with problematic power. Simultaneously, the internal balance is like nonsense often. Whole swaths of this book, because again, it's a massive book, are just unusable. But like, there's still a lot of good choices, but there's a heck of a lot of bad choices too. And they feel like pretty fundamental units to the army. This isn't like the Doomfire Warlocks where you're like, why is this even in doc? Right? There are like witch elves that aren't playable in this. That feels problematic. I'm talking about Saurus, obviously. It And ultimately, it falls down on the design stuff. This is so overwrought, over complex. Too much. Thank you. Yeah, Keith Rogers said too much bookkeeping. Like, it is complicated nonsensory to play this army. That's it. Now, at the same time, there's a lot of really cool ideas in it. There's a lot of cool things, right? You do often feel the verisimilitude to some degree of playing cool dinosaurs with a magic toad guiding them. So, it's the top of bad. There we go. Tom thinks it should be unmade. All right, fair enough.
And the models are trash.
And there's a lot of bad models. Not all, but there's a lot of bad ones in there. Daughters of Cain, Tom, where are they going?
I think that it's a good book.
Okay.
I think that it has some MPE that has not been addressed, but I think overall the book it fixed the snake problem. Like, the snakes are super viable now. Arguably, they are the more viable competitive option of the two. It continues to have an identity. It's no longer the problems of like the super survivable witch elves aren't a thing anymore. There's a vast deep bench of different models and different units that are playable. I like it.
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna say Daughters of Cain is a good book. Yes, I agree. Now, I'm putting it down here. It's going down near the bottom of good. And I think that's because we didn't solve the NPE problems. Some of this is probably seasonal based, like Witch Elves and Sisters not living up to what they should be. I think post Bounty Hunter season, I think it'll be okay. Lord Billy, yeah, I still like a lot of things about the Fireslayer book. That's why I put it at the top of bad. But again, we're purposely sorting these in with no middle ground.
Right. Which is why I said on objective kind of reflection, it's lackluster. Like, it's the top of bad.
Yeah. So I think Daughter's internal balance only gets stronger with the shift of seasons we talked about with Thralls and some of the other armies here, right? And I think we've got some clear things that are out of bounds with this book. 4+ rally, that's out of bounds. It's just out of bounds on a massive way. The fact that we didn't fix the shooty snakes is a problem, right? Like, these are things that could have been rectified, that shouldn't have happened or could have been rectified. So it's
hey GW, they still can. It's just an errata.
Yeah, just an errata way. So, like, I'm far from saying it's perfect, but I'm willing to say it's good. Those things are negatives, but they don't ultimately mark it down. It's like, you're a C+. There you are. You're still good. You pass. Okay, cool. Heed Knights of Slaanesh. It's bad. It's somehow worse than KO. Done. It fails in every objective sense we talked about. Every one.
Except from a verisimilitude standpoint.
Nope, fails there too.
The entire army is about edging.
Well, yeah. If you mean the entire army is about... I was just thought you meant the entire army is about suffering, and you have to suffer to play it.
Well, and yes. Edging and suffering, yeah.
Sure.
It's both.
On a meta level, it's perfect design. It's genius. It's an Andy Kaufman routine. Okay?
Indeed.
But on every objective level, power out the door. Internal balance out the door. Verisimilitude in general, bad. Right? Yeah. Viability, playability of lists. Yeah, I mean, I guess every list is viable because they're all bad. So who cares? It's like... You take Sigvald and then figure out what your other 1,800 points are.
The funny thing is,
it's good.
Is that at this point, I've kind of like non-intentionally, gathered about 1,500 points of Slaanesh.
Sure.
Like, just here and there, just picking up just random battle forces and stuff like that as rewards. Someday, I might do an army.
Sure.
Today is not that day.
No, well, we'll see what we get. I mean, it's just bad. There's nothing more we're saying about it. We've ranted on it about this show for forever.
Yes.
Okay. Magakin of Nurgle.
It's a good book.
It's a good book.
Yep.
It goes right on this level right here.
It has some MPE. The flies arguably are a little bit overtuned.
Yep.
Or they were. I mean, arguably they may still be. Maybe not. It's a good book. It has a lot of playability across the different play styles. It's interesting. Yep.
Agreed. We had we did have some internal balance challenges with the Blight Lords, which we can't overlook. But I think that when you hammer down that proud nail, you actually have some good internal balance across the board.
Yeah, totally.
The verisimilitude is like 1,000% win. It's one of the best verisimilitude books they've done.
Yep.
Power level, it's been fine. It's like right pretty much in the zone where you would expect it to be. It has some good matchups, it has some bad matchups. It's got some, it does well, right?
Yep.
So I mean, like, I don't know what more we would really look for. It's a good book. It's also just pretty cool. It's pretty cool stuff. All right. Excellent. Boop boop. Oh, stretched it. Darn it. Come here. Come here, you little bugger. They tried to get away from me. Gloomspite Gits.
It's a bad book.
It's a bad book. We've said it's a bad book since the beginning. It's still a bad book. That doesn't mean people don't have fun with it and love it, but it is a bad book.
It has had so many adjustments
and changes. Just throwing spaghetti at the walls to see if we can fix this train wreck. Yeah.
And I just maybe next in a month or so.
Sure. We got to do it on the way. But right now it's bad. Keyword bingo. So the rules are incomprehensibly bad, like overtly wrought.
Yep.
Allegiance ability, bad moon nonsense. Just like oi shinoi. Yep. Right? Like on every single level. The amount of crap we've had to throw at this book to try to right the ship, and it's still taking on water, says everything you need to know.
It's so sad because I have multiple
I agree with Haywo, by the way. It's more FAQ than man now. Yes.
Exactly. I have multiple Gloomspite armies. Not one. Sure. I have multiple. And it's just in a box.
Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna move it down a scotch here. It's gonna end up down on this tier. Okay, cool. All right. How do I have two of these? Oh, I have two of these accidentally. That's funny. We don't need two of those. Auric War Clans. Boy, what do we do with this one? What do we do with this one, Tom? Where's it fall?
Hey, good.
Okay.
Why? It's so painful for me because Iron Jaws carries the entire book.
Sure.
You know what? The other three factions technically are meaningless. It's just Iron Jaws.
People have been having great success with the Savage Boys.
Yeah. It's Iron Jaws plus, Iron Jaws not in armor, and that's the book.
It is 4 books in a trench coat. Arturius Rex is correct.
Yeah,
we split it last time, but we can't split it this time because it's either the Battletome is good or the Battletome is bad.
I'm going to say that the Battletome's good.
God, this is tough. I love this book so much.
I know, and that's the key, right?
All right, guess what? Here's what I'm doing. Cities, you're moving up to Daughters of Cain level. Oryx, you're going at the bottom. You're going at the bottom of good. The Iron Jaws, I'm glad they have such broad, heavily armored shoulders because they're terrible from carrying this whole book.
Carry the book. Yeah. No, I don't know how else to say it. Because the Iron Jaws stuff is so perfection.
Sure. And by the way, Bone Splitters aren't bad. Bone Splitters actually have some decent internal balance in their area.
Yep.
There's you can use lots of the units.
Verisimilitude, it feels like it should, just masses of meat. Yep.
So I don't want to count them out because we were really down on them when they came out, and that time has proven us wrong on that.
Right. Yep. The real big failure is the Cruel Boys. And honestly, I still want to play that army. I've eyed it a couple times. I don't see a path to victory yet. But I've eyed it a couple times. It's well, maybe I could, maybe I should, and then I back myself off every time.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to make it work, and that tells me that there might be something there.
Yeah, I agree. It's the bottom of good. Boy, is it just on the line, and I could easily see the argument for it tipping over. But for now, this is our judgment. So there you go. The verdict has been handed down. Okay.
Tom M asks, hold on. Tom M asks,
Yep.
doesn't this book fail on internal balance alone? I don't think so. And here's why. Because it is 4 books, each of those are having to be evaluated independently. Like,
I really think
in
of it as
Iron
3.
Jaws,
I don't think Big Wah's a book. I think Big Wah's just a appendix.
oh, like a Big Wah's a catch-all. It's functionally 3 books, and so like you have to look at, like, if you play Iron Jaws, it has to be within what you can play in Iron Jaws.
Right. And that's the trick to me. I look at Iron Jaws and go, it passes the test. I look at Bone Splitters and go, it passes the test. I look at Cruel Boys and go, this fails miserably. Well, yes. 2 out of 3 is a 66%, so it's more good than bad. So it just crosses the line. That's it.
Yep.
So, and I mean, hey, you do it, like, the Cruel Boys do have a great verisimilitude to them. Like, no lie on that. All 3 of these armies actually have verisimilitude. They're all passing that test.
Yeah.
Just the execution's terrible. All right. Zinch, let's keep us moving. I want to make sure we wrap this up soon here.
It passes the test. It's a good book.
It is. It is a good book. Like, yeah, it's good. We got rid of a lot of the bad stuff. It feels like Zinch.
And there's flexibility of units. There's, like, people are feeling Carracks now and they're excited about it. Like, yeah, it's a good book.
Yeah, it maybe has a little bit of a power challenge currently, but for similitude, you certainly feel like you're playing Zinch, the Master of Fate, screwing around with Destiny dice. You're cheating. You get to cheat legally, right? Yeah, it's there. I agree. It's good. Like, it is a good book. It's not out of balance. Good for similitude. Decent enough internal balance. All right. Sons of Behemoth.
You take this one real quick.
No problem. You go. I got an easy answer for Sons of Behemoth. It's a good book. And I'm happy to say that. Obviously, that's still the old tome picture. Sorry. But you know it's the new book. It's good. It's not great. Could have been great. It was definitely a book that could have been great. But it's still very much good. We fixed a lot of the problems. Like, we now have the new king, and that's there's more variability to the lists because we added 2 whole new megas to it. It's not just 3 dum-dums now. We upped the weapon damage and reduced the attacks, which is how those things should have always been in the first place. I'm glad GW realized I was right. Because in the original book, when it came out, that was the number one thing I harped on, and everybody who was over there was like, oh, blah, 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 but it's this is blah, blah, blah. And not only did it make the book more powerful and harder to actually fight, it also made it worse. So in this case, we made the book weaker, which made it better. Fantastic. Could have been absolutely great if we had nailed some of the other options of the book. It's not fully there. But it's good. Solidly and good. Last one, Tom. Skaven. We had to save the best for last. It's not really the best, but where's it fallen?
I think it is the bottom of a good book.
Okay.
I think that it has problems. It has real problems.
Sure.
But I also think that it's better than it was.
Yep.
And it's compelling, and there are lots of options across all the sub-factions.
So, variability of lists through the roof, 1,000%. It is the highest variability of lists out of every book that has been published in 3.0. It is the most fair tome, as I've said repeatedly. Okay, so power-wise, we have no problem here.
Yep.
Internal balance, we've got some strong challenges with.
Yep.
Okay, because there are some real whiffs in this book. I'm looking at you, guy on the cover of the book. All right.
Indeed.
But there are also a lot of good units. It's the Stormcast challenge, right? Where enough are good, you can write a lot of different lists with a lot of different scrolls. So we're okay. Verisimilitude is insane, as they always have been. It's crazy how high the verisimilitude is in this. You feel very much like you're playing Skaven. So by all of those accounts, it's right there in good book.
Yep.
Right? So there we go. Oh, I left off Lumineth. That's what I didn't do. I'm sorry. I don't have a Lumineth picture. I don't know why. All right, well, we'll just say it. I apologize. Thanks, Tom. I'm glad you caught that. Tom M. Thank you. Somehow my Lumineth picture must not have copied in from the folder. I'm sorry. Okay. Where are you putting Lumineth, Tom? I'm sorry I don't have a little picture for him.
I think Lumineth is a good book. I want to say it. I think that it's. I think there's a very. I think that there's a. Can't say there's a variability of lists. There's a list that people like, but it has a bunch of different units. It's not spamming any one unit, which I think has a lot going for it. I don't know. Maybe it's the top of bad books.
Okay.
I don't know. It's somewhere. It's either the bottom of good or the top of bad.
Here, I'm just gonna put in a little comment right here. Oh no, I don't want to do that. Sorry, wrong thing. Go away. It's fine. Yeah, I agree. It's the top of bad.
Yeah, I think ultimately, I think it's still a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. It just feels still like half a book.
And the reason why is when I went to say oh, there's a whole bunch of units. You're using a bunch of units now. That's true. But almost everybody comes to the exact same list, no matter who you are.
Here's the thing. And this one's top of bad for me, pretty with a bullet. They did get rid of most of the NP. Good.
Yep.
The variability of lists.
Except for Total Eclipse.
Sure. Most of it. I said most.
Yeah.
The variability of lists still isn't there. Maybe some of that's seasonal. Maybe some of that'll change. I don't know. I'm not actually sure with that one.
Sure.
But it feels like power-wise, it's fine. Internal balance, there's still issues. Yeah. And I guess I don't know what to think of it for similitude because I don't know what the identity of the thing is supposed to be other than we're all wizards, I guess.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how well it captures any of that. But that being said, if somebody said no, it's the bottom of good for me, I'd be like, yeah, okay.
And that's what I said. It's somewhere between bottom of good and top of bad.
Honestly, this one is the one that's the most middle for me out of all of them.
Yeah, I have Lumineth Army. I was excited for the new book, and I'm painting up Soulblight right now.
Yeah. So
I mean, okay. I think that describes my feeling.
Okay. All have been judged. I apologize for not having the Lumineth picture. Final points as we close out here. Some things that I want to hit on. I think design quality matters, right? And I think there's a lot of the little stuff, it's in the nuance. How much do the artifacts, the command traits, the sub-factions allow for clear options to play while not being broken or encouraging bad behavior, right? A lot of things we touched on are hitting those things. How much is it opening up things without skewing things? That's a real tricky line to walk. 4+ rally, bad. Because it's a super powerful rule, but it just skews everything right off the choices right off the gate.
Yeah. Yeah.
How clear and easy is it to ingest, understand the rules, right? We talked about KO and all that kind of stuff where it's just a nightmare.
Yep.
And is there a lot of memory tax, things like that?
Yep.
The thing we kept seeing over and over again was larger Battletomes have a challenge. The lack of internal balance and the duplication of roles. When there's too many scrolls and game elements for everything to get the full attention, you just feel it.
Yeah.
Right? It can be overcome, but it's really hard. I mean, my guess is they assign the same amount of time or nearly for all the books.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe it varies a little.
Which is a real problem.
But it's not this book has 7 War Scrolls. We'll give it, 4 months in development. This book has 80. We'll give it 2 years. It's not like that.
No.
Right? Maybe it's they get an extra couple weeks or a month or something like that, or 2 months or something.
Yeah.
So we've just got a straight challenge there.
So can I go through the rest of yours, and then I want to offer
and then finally, psychographic profiles matter. This is just the point I wanted to leave on. If you disagree with any of our points, I think that's perfectly fair because individual books will always speak more or less to different people, right? And some books can effectively play in all 3 spaces, like you mentioned that a couple of times.
Yep.
But most don't, right? Most just don't. Right. And so that matters a lot for how you vibe with the book.
Sure.
Okay, go ahead. Close us out.
Can you go back to the prior image?
I sure can. Oops. There we go.
So not only do we have a majority of the books in good for this image, take note of what we know of the next 6 months of these, 7 books in the bad. Is that how many we have?
There are 8 books in the bad.
8 books in the bad. At least 5 of these are getting updated in the next 5 months.
We believe.
Like
based on just logic. Unless some real weird curveball of a new army happened.
Right. We know that Slaanesh and Khorne, like we have 2 Chaos, assuming there's not any more
Chaos people chaos popping up. No new Chaos gods
like
show
launching.
Up. Yeah.
Right. Like those 2 are going to be in that lineup.
Mm-hmm.
We know that. We know that we have 2 death books coming. Most likely it's OBR and probably Soulblight. So that covers that. We know Beastman is coming. We know Gitz is
You meant Flesh Eaters, but still.
Oh, did I say it? Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
I knew what you meant.
That's what I meant. Yeah, I meant Flesh Eater. Yeah, so we have for sure 4 of these books that are absolutely going to be in the next 5 to 6 months.
Yep.
Half of the bad is almost guaranteed to be
well, and then very likely you have either Seraphon or KO or both also happening.
Right.
You have 2 order books. So.
Right. So there's a high likelihood that all but 1 or 2 of these books
could drift into good very soon.
Could drift into good within the next 6 months.
And that is exciting.
That is an amazing place to be.
Agreed.
Like it would be really easy to come away from a segment like this and to talk about how bad the game is, or like how bad, what bad books look like. But what's stunning to me is just how good things are, not only now, but potentially, assuming the design intent continues forward in the next 6 months. And I'm super stoked about that.
Yeah, I agree. By summer next year, I think we're going to have just a really different feel to the game, because I think most books do, but I think at that point we'll be at the world where we say the books are good. The Battletomes are good.
And not only that, when you look at this, almost all of these is a 2.0 book, except for Fireslayers.
Sure.
And Lumineth, right?
Yeah.
But almost everything else.
Oh yeah, technically there's 9 because Lumineth's up there. Sorry, I forgot about it.
Yeah. But so Lumineth and Fireslayers are the only 3.0 books that really seem arguably that are misses. And note that both of those were at the top of the bat.
Yeah. Yep.
So we've even tightened the quality, the range, right? Yeah. Of ruling out almost all the bad, which is amazing.
Yeah, hopefully we never get a 0% again like we did with Slaanesh.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, and I don't mean to, I'm not aiming to blow smoke up GW's ass, but just simply to say that man, we are in a wonderful place for the community, and we need to celebrate that.
Yep. All right, good stuff. Well, what do you think out there? Do we nail it? Are we close? What's good for you? What's bad for you? And why? Hit us up in the comments. Tell us. Hey, don't forget to hit that like button. Liking the show helps other people find it. It's free and easy, and clicking buttons is fun. So you're sitting there right now. Hello, all of you. There's less likes than people watching. Click the button. Just do it. Subscribe if you haven't already. Don't forget, if you want to support the show, you can do that in a couple ways beyond just liking and subscribing. There's a Patreon down below you can join, focused on hobby and progress and taking your next step on your hobby journey. Full of a great Discord community full of enthusiastic hobbyists. If you want to directly make your voice heard, well, then you can, of course, buy a Team Tyler shirt or hoodie or something like that, or Team Tom. Whose team are you on? We'll see who is the best co-host. We are now basically 3 weeks away from voting ending.
It makes a wonderful Christmas gift.
Absolutely. Everybody
I've seen some Team Tom shirts in person, and they're stunning.
Absolutely. So do all that stuff, but for everybody out there, thank you so much for watching. We really, really appreciate it. As always, we'll see you next Wednesday.